Kolbinsky tells us about a rather unique graduation ceremony he had at the DEA Academy.
Well, when I was there, and I don't think they do it anymore, but they had this anatomically correct blow-up sheep, okay?
Wait a minute. How do you know it was anatomically correct there, Eric?
He's a farm boy.
I saw the darn thing. It was on public display.
Did you lift the tail?
I think the tail was sticking up, so you didn't have to lift it. But Phoebe, Federal Bureau of Investigation, they called this thing Phoebe, and so this is kind of a way of sticking it to the bureau, right?
Welcome to Game of Crimes. All right, everybody. Welcome back once again to the original, unadulterated, and meth-free Game of Crimes. I am your host. And you'll understand, too. Don't do meth, kids. We keep saying that. I am your ultimate host, Morgan Wright, here literally with my partner in crime.
This is Steve Murphy. You can call me Murph. And if you can see me on camera, you'd see Danielle here with me, one of my granddaughters.
Hey, Danielle. Hi.
She's my buddy. She's my buddy this weekend.
You don't deserve such cuteness, Murph. Send her this way.
I know. She has the best hugs in the world.
Yes, she does. Well, Danielle, she just keep the earphones on you. We don't want Danielle to hear some of the stuff we're talking about.
True. Absolutely true.
That's the best part, too. So, hey, guys, let's kick this off here real quick. So, hey, we'll just get some of our quick housekeeping out of the way. So first of all, again, as we say, thank you for joining us. Head on over to the Apple and Spotify. Just give us the 5 stars. It really helps out a lot. Elevates us, gets us into more people. We're seeing our numbers go up. We just hit a huge milestone for us, which we really appreciate your guys' help on. So it is big time, baby. And also head on over to our website, gameofcrimespodcast.com. As you'll find out with our previous episode 44, Robert Mazer is the Infiltrator. We've got his book up there, his 2 books that he's got out, The Infiltrator and The Betrayal. So that's on over there, our mailing list, merch. Follow us on the social media at Game of Crimes on Twitter, at Game of Crimes Podcast on Facebook and the Instagram. But where you have to be, where do you have to be, Steve?
Got to be on Patreon because we have, we've got so much content out here. It's unbelievable. And I think we've got twice as much content on Patreon now.
Oh, I'm telling you. We're catching up with the number of episodes we have on our podcast and Patreon. In fact, we just got through, as we're recording this intro outro for our episode coming out Monday, talking about Eric Kolbinsky, we just got through doing our Patreon episode of You Can't Make This Shit Up. And let me tell you, you can't make this shit up. And we're going to use one of those stories today in our small town police blotter. So you're going to have to stay tuned from that. But yes, head on over to patreon.com/Game of Crimes. It's where all the action is happening. Also, if you just want to do a quick pause for the cause, paypal.com, use our email, gameofcrimespodcast@gmail.com, or paypal.me/Game of Crimes, whatever it makes it easier for you to support the show and bring you even more exciting content. But Steve, one thing we should talk about before we talk about our show about crime, we got to let people know about our show about crime, which is we talk about bad people doing bad things and bad people doing bad things to good people. We do take the stories seriously, but
we never, and you know us, we never take ourselves serious. There's no thin skin here.
Nope. So guess what time it is?
I bet it's time for Small Town Police Blotter.
Yay! Yes, and we've got some good ones today, too. I'm telling you. There's one I have never heard of before. But let's get started, Steve.
Okay.
Have you ever taken a shower in a place that really wasn't a shower?
Yeah.
Yeah. Have you ever taken a shower in an elevator?
No.
Well, this one guy, and it's funny the way the title and the subtitle are informative. Title, Police. Nude man thought elevator was shower. Subtitle, drugs not believed to be a factor. So we always got to, so police arrested a man Thursday evening who they say was found naked in an elevator that he was thought was a shower. And the employees there reported him as an unwanted guest on the premises. When the police arrived, they began searching the hotel for the man who they located inside the elevator. When they found the guy in the elevator, he was naked.
Did he pass the soap?
No, Well, he said he was confused, but he was not threatening. He even smiled at officers when they arrived. That's the scary part. When you're naked in an elevator and you smile as officers arrive, I'm going, whoa, Nelly, hang on.
Send me back up.
Well, apparently he was clothed when he came into the facility, when he came into the hospital, but decided to undress inside the elevator. They don't believe drugs was that. He was charged, with public nudity and criminal trespass, but he is going to get a mental evaluation.
Yeah, he might go to the lockdown section of that hospital after that little stunt. And how was he getting the water to run out? And was there alcohol involved?
It didn't say that. It said he was just he was just fine and dandy and just thought the elevator was a shower.
He's just a wackadoo.
Yep.
Welcome to the hospital.
Yeah. Welcome to the hospital. Hey, Steve, let me ask you before we start this next question. Have you ever had anything happen to you where it takes you just a little while to get over it?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, like, you're related to the Hatfields and McCoys. How long did that go on?
Yeah, that was more than just a little spat.
Well, this one lady might have something on you. Strongville police report that a Blue Spruce Drive caller reported that a female was dressed in Civil War clothing and sitting in the grass. The caller said she appeared out of it. An officer spoke with the female who said she was out for a walk, dressed in Civil War clothing, and she was still depressed about the Confederate Army losing the war 155 years ago.
Oh, my gosh. Now, she needs to go to the hospital where the guy on the elevator was naked and going into that special section where you get locked down. Mm-hmm. Oh, my gosh. Well, she's sitting out there waiting on the Yankees to come back.
Maybe the outlaw Josie Wells. She just got through watching that and thought, hey, maybe if Josie Wells ride through, we can,
team
the
up.
South shall rise again. But not going to happen. I hate to tell you, we're way past that. So.
Oh yeah. The sad part is there's so many people. I'm from the South. There's so many people still living in the past.
Yeah. Well, this one. I guarantee you, Steve. Out of all the people you've charged for crimes, mm-hmm. Have you ever charged an animal with a crime?
Never. I can honestly say that's a good solid 38 years in law enforcement, never charged an animal.
And normally that's not going to happen in the United States, so that's your first clue. This has to happen somewhere else. Goat accused of robbery. Police in Nigeria are holding a goat on suspicion of attempted armed robbery. Vigilantes seized the black and white goat, saying it was an armed robber who had used black magic to transform himself into an animal to escape after trying to steal a Mazda 323. And this is the police saying this. The spokesman for police in the eastern state of Kwara said the goat is in our custody. Vigilantes saw some hoodlums attempting to rob a car. One escaped while the other turned into a goat.
Okay, we need to get an expanded section in that lockdown part of the hospital because there's a lot of customers coming in today.
And cops too. I mean, but this again, it's cultural too. Some of those folks believe in black magic. It's like, yes, you can turn into a goat. Out of all the things, why would I turn into a goat? Why would I turn into a ferocious lion and be king of the jungle?
There you go. Oh my gosh. I just need to add that place to my list of places I never want to frickin' go.
All right. So final thing here. Normally we do like, what year was it? Or I might do something else. But we said, hey, we were going to do a story from our previous episode. We just got through releasing on Patreon. It's our April edition of You Can't Make This Shit Up. And one of the stories from there I thought was the most, I just can't believe the lady fell for it, Steve. So you've heard this story. And hear it once again, right?
Okay.
A real woman hired a hitman on a fake website. Wendy Lee Ween, 52, found Rent a Hitman online, a real website called Rent a Hitman, and filled out a form asking for help killing her ex-husband. Unfortunately for her, and fortunately for her ex, the site's owned not by a hitman, by a computer professional, Bob Ennis, who initially launched it in 2005 to promote a hacking prevention business. Mm-hmm. Years later, he started checking the site's inbox and found a lot of disturbing requests. I think you would. Since then, he's made the site into an obvious joke. But when he gets requests, he turns them over to the police like he did with Ween, who, guess what? She used a pseudonym, but used her real contact information. Hi, my name's Betty Smith, but this is my real email address, and this is my real phone number. Now, she wanted him to do it because she said her ex stole $20,000, and she didn't want to commit the crime herself because, quote, I prefer not going to jail. That quote is not going to age well, listeners. I'm telling you right now.
You know what? This sounds like something our friends James and Jimmy from Small Town Murders would do just to get a laugh off of people. Well, if you haven't listened to them, go listen to them. They're fantastic. Small Town Murder.
Small Town Murder, man. Anyway, Ennis forwarded that to the Michigan State Police, who posed as people affiliated with the site to contact Ween. Now, we've all got, hey, look, we could have got Jay Dobbins, we could have got Lou Velosi, we could have got Dominic Polifrone, Chris Bayless. We got plenty of people who do undercover work. Next time, come to us. We'll hook you up with some real pros. She gave the detective her ex's address and told them when and where he works and a $200 down payment on the $5,000 tab for murder. They then charged with her, and she just pleaded guilty and could serve up to 9 years in prison.
Where she needs to be. Yeah, it's just unacceptable.
Unacceptable. Well, thus endeth the reading of the stupidity for today. That one did not age well. But and speaking of...
Well, she gets to go to the hospital with everybody else. That's where she belongs.
Yeah, that's right. There's a place. So if you guys want to hear more about that, this was one of our stories, and you can't make this shit up. And this wasn't even the top of the heap. This was a good one, but this one didn't take the cake. We have other ones that literally took the cake. You got to go listen. Patreon.com/Game of Crimes.
Absolutely.
Just another shameless plug for it. But hey, anyway, before we get into episode 45, real quick catch up on episode 44, Robert Mazer and the Infiltrator. I mean, you want to talk about a guy. I mean, you got to have stones, of steel to do the stuff he was doing, operating in the environments he was operating in. And then not only that, like we said, Steve, I mean, we just got a lot of great feedback. I mean, one of the guys too, even said, hey man, Bryan Cranston even sounds like Robert Mazer, in the movie The Infiltrator. So
yeah, it's cool. And now Bob's got a second book out, The Betrayal, which I've read, and you need to, you talk about a glutton for punishment. I like Bob. He's extremely intelligent. I mean, he does things that I've tried to figure out and I can't. He's even explained them to me, and I still don't understand them. But a glutton for punishment, he's at the end of his career. He's just infiltrated the Medellin cartel on the money laundering side. And what's he do next? I'm going to give it up. Well, okay, I'll infiltrate the Cali cartel. Let's see what happens. Bam.
They say like Chris, what was the one? You can't eat just one, Lay's potato chips. You can't infiltrate just one. Hey, let's infiltrate two. So
unbelievable.
But as fun as that story was, this next guy we have coming up, which is a friend of yours.
Yep.
Eric Kolbinsky. There's going to be some funny stuff. So now he's hooked up with Luis Navia, who we talked about. Luis Navia, and it was Pure Narco, the book. We wrote about him. We talked about him. And Luis he was a fun guy, and so we did his episode back, episode 23 was Luis Navia. As I say, Luis Navia, if you want to say it in Espanol. And so Eric was the DEA agent who was down there with him. Well, as we got to talking with Eric, we realized something about him is he has he will tell you he's been kicked out of a few countries and a few programs. He's been kicked out of more countries than I have.
Let's just say that Eric, he will, if he doesn't agree with you, he's going to challenge you, which I admire,
And in fact, listen to the part where we thought we were going to get him, because we always ask a lot of the DEA guys or federal guys, did you have to write a memo? And what Eric was talking about, and you'll hear it when he talks about Phoebe, just listen for Phoebe. They told, they wanted him to write a memo. He refused. He says, I didn't do anything wrong. Now, you're just getting ready to graduate from DEA Academy. You're not there yet. You haven't graduated yet. And you're telling one of the class counselors, you're not going to write a memo. I'm not going to do it. That should give you an indication of how Eric's career is going to go inside DEA.
Yeah, especially towards the end of the academy, you're there, and it's like, hey, just another couple of weeks and we're out of here, and the counselors that you could get along with, that didn't have the holier than thou attitudes, they'd tell you, look, you're in here for 17 weeks, 13 weeks, whatever it is, just do everything you're told. If they tell you go shit in the corner, tell them, ask them how high, and
keep your head down, just get the work done, but not Eric.
And then when you get your badge and your creds, you tell them kiss your butt and you're out in the field, but not Eric.
But not Eric, because he is the Mr. Spock of DEA. If it's not logical, he's going to call you out on it. But Steve, to get to the story and to hear Eric's logic and how he applied it, and to figure out which countries and programs he got kicked out of, I got to ask you one question. Are you ready to play the biggest, baddest, most dangerous game of all? And we won't kick you out of this one too, the Game of Crimes.
Absolutely. So everybody, as we say, get in, sit down, shut up, and hold on. Bring in our friend, Eric Kolbinsky.
You're funny, Murph. Right. Always before we get started, Murph has to say something smart. But bienvenidos, amigos. Bienvenidos. Welcome to the next episode of Narcos. Cali. Oh, no, that's the Patreon stuff. And if you're not subscribed to Patreon, you need to be. Game of Crimes, patreon.com/Game of Crimes. But anyway, we've got another stud with us today, Murph excluded. And this guy, now a while back, we did an episode with Luis Navia. If you guys will remember, it was a book called Pure Narco. And it was episode 23, by the way. And Luis had an interesting history. Coming from Cuba, knowing Castro, was it too, Steve? Meyer Lansky? They had a connection with Meyer Lansky?
Oh, yeah. He and his family are very wealthy and very well connected.
But all good things must come to an end. And as we were discussing, for drug traffickers, there's only one of two outcomes. You either die or you go to federal prison. Mm-hmm. And this is the story about how Luis went to federal prison.
Yeah.
Courtesy of our next guest. Welcome to the podcast, Eric Kolbinsky.
Woohoo!
Thank you, guys. Glad to be here.
And I think it's Kolbinsky, right?
Kolbinsky? What did I say? Kolbinsky?
Kolbinsky, yeah. That's the correct.
There you go. Come on.
That's
now,
the way you
right.
spelled it. That's the way I pronounced it. Look at Murphy's.
He spelled it
the
right.
The writing's too small. You can't even read it.
I've heard it pronounced so many different ways, it doesn't faze me.
We're just going to call you Special K. Eric Special K. All right. So, hey, but this is going to be fun, too, because we got Luis's view of what happened and his side of growing up and how things came to pass and how he came to meet you in a southern, a country in the southern hemisphere after he had been transported, getting ready to ship out 26 tons of cocaine, I believe, to Europe.
Yep.
And Eric, you've ruined things for Luis. But according to Luis, and seriously too, he even said it on the podcast, you saved his life. Had you not done that, he'd be a dead man because he should have been dead a couple other times, right? Who did he get kidnapped by, Steve, that nobody used to survive?
Rasguño,
yeah.
And he survived. I'm still shocked that he survived that encounter.
It was a stunt double. His stunt double got kidnapped by Rasguño.
Oh my gosh.
But
unbelievable.
So,
and just to let you know, Eric and I had the pleasure of working in Miami together. That's how we know each other. So
how do you know Eric had the pleasure?
This is like, hey, everybody knows me. It's a pleasure, right? Listeners, that
absolutely
Morgan knows it's a pleasure
to love me.
Just shut him down. But this is like old home week, bringing an old friend on here. So Eric, thank you so much for being here, brother.
Like I said, glad to be here. Looking forward to it. This should be fun.
All right.
It should be, as long as Murph just doesn't make these corny jokes like he's been known to make. So
that's like the pot calling the kettle black there, mister.
Hey. It's all about the narrative. So let's speaking of narrative, let's talk about you for a minute, Eric. So as we always do, we want to talk about this thing of ours, this thing called law enforcement. So give us kind of an idea. How the hell did Eric Kolbinsky, see, I said it right, Kolbinsky, Special K, how did you get involved in law enforcement? Where did this urge, itch, desire come from?
Well, that's an interesting question because I many times have reflected back on my life and asked myself the same thing.
What the hell was I thinking, right?
Yeah, well, I got a degree in agriculture from NC State University, and at the time I was considering going on to graduate school. And particularly I was interested in working overseas in international agriculture. But I had a buddy of mine who was on the Durham, North Carolina Police Department, and he kept bugging me. He said, look, they're looking for guys with college educations. You'd make a great cop. And, I grew up with a strong moral background, right and wrong, good and evil type of thing.
Well, if you're going to go into farming, you had to be a farm boy, right?
Well, we had, my parents had purchased about 30 acres and, we had some cows and chickens and that sort of thing. And really, I got more interested in agriculture from the standpoint of subsistence farming, living off the land type of thing. And
I was holding my breath there for a minute. I thought you were going to say cultivating weed.
No. Some of my NC State classmates, I think, were there for that exact purpose. So trust me. But no, so that was more of the whole idea, which now, current state of affairs, is probably a pretty good idea.
Yeah, the way the prices are going, you might want to grow your own, as they say, but this time it means food.
Yeah.
So I got one quick question for you, Eric. Who are you rooting for in the NCAA basketball tournament?
Well, Carolina, of course. I mean,
okay. Not NC State.
Actually, I started my freshman year at Carolina.
Yeah.
I started off at Carolina. So anyway, so he kept bugging me to put in an application, and more or less it's time I took some time off after college. I was down the Outer Banks, North Carolina, building a house for the family, and so on the way home one day, I stopped in at City Hall to pick up an application, and they said, "Nah, you can't. You got to fill it out while you're here." So I filled the darn thing out. Next thing you know, I got some background investigators knocking on the door, wanting to interview me and stuff. And another little ironic, strange little thing that happened along the way was I used to go on ride-alongs with my friend Kenny, and I can remember it was a typical winter's day in North Carolina. Everything was gray. You couldn't tell the ground from the sky. Everything was gray, and it was cold. It was miserable. The patrol car that he was in those days, there weren't take-home cars. You picked up a car from the previous shift, and he hits the brakes, and Coke cans and McDonald bags come flying out from under the seat, and it just and then to make matters worse, the driver's door wouldn't open, so I can remember him laying down with his head in my lap and kicking the driver's door open to get out to answer a call. And, so anyway, my thought was, man, I could never do this. This is such a dirty, ugly job. I just couldn't do it. But anyway, I get hired, and about a year later, I'm in a patrol car, and I'm saying, man,
Did you have to kick the door open to get out?
No, I got some new cars.
We got some budget problems in Durham. You might have to BYOC, bring your own car.
But it was like kind of a deja vu moment. All of a sudden, I was there and said, oh my gosh, here I am. What happened?
Hey, but a quick aside for those of us who have worked city police departments, like all three of us have, and as when you didn't have take-home cars as a trooper, I had a take-home car, which was glorious because you didn't have to share it with anybody. But hey, real quick, what was the worst thing you ever found in one of your cars when you took it over from a shift?
Oh gosh, I think the worst thing was always the bag of greasy chicken bones. Other than the gun under the back seat, we'd always check the back seat,
or the dope, or the needles.
Yeah, we'd always check the back seat, before a shift.
Cow.
But
how old were you when you got hired by Durham?
27. Okay. I was on the 8-year college plan. I dropped out for 4 years.
See,
that's why we get along.
I told my daughter, because she was talking about, she wasn't sure if she's going to do 4 or 5 years. I say, you may be on the 5-year plan, but Dad is on the 4-year plan. So if you're on, but that's the other thing too, is we used to have guys who would not clean their cars. And so, every now and then you'd find a greasy bag of old stale food and stick it under there, run the heater for a while, and then turn it over to them. And it's like, anyway, but those were some bad old days. But so, how long did it take you from application until hiring?
With the police department, probably about 6 months or less. And actually, in those days, we were public safety. We did both police and fire. So I was trained in both.
Just tell me you didn't want to be a fireman, please. Just whatever.
No. And of course, every so often, and I even made driver out of the academy, and on a regular fire department, to make driver, takes years, to get that. But that's how shorthanded they were and stuff. So, no, and I used to hate when I got station duty. I hated it.
Oh yeah. So, but when you started work, how big of a town was Durham? How big? What was because it's now called Raleigh, Durham, right? Or Mecklenburg, or
No. They're still separate municipalities, but our police department was about 300 officers at the time. So I don't know. We were several 100,000 people. Durham, it's a triangle. There's Chapel Hill, Durham, and Raleigh, all there together.
Yeah, a lot of tech companies are out there. I've visited that area there. So how long? So what's one of the funnest things or funniest things that ever happened to you on the police department?
Wow, I can't. It's the first time anybody's asked me about a funny thing that happened to you.
That you're willing to talk about on the radio. I mean,
I see you recalling something. You're hiding something from us, Eric.
I'm trying to think of.
Funny call, funny thing.
We were always playing jokes on each other, and we were vice. I was in vice and narcotics there, and so go and pick up the prostitute at the bus station who happens to be a guy, and So, you give the bus signal, and of course, they always wait to come in. So, at the time, it wasn't very funny, but in hindsight, it was funny. It was humorous.
You said hindsight.
Well, no, it didn't go that far.
Oh,
It didn't get quite that far.
we
But
have true confessions.
yeah,
Game of Crimes has
yeah,
become true confessions now.
yeah.
But on the flip side, what was one of the worst things you had to get involved in, or one of the hairiest things you were involved in?
I was involved in a shooting, drug deal, and it was actually the largest. It was a 3-kilo coke deal. This is what, I don't know, early 80s, mid 80s, and it was the largest coke bust we had at the time. And my partner got shot, and we had one of the bad guys was killed as well. Well, my partner wasn't killed, but we got one bad guy was killed. So that was probably the worst, obviously, thing that happened.
What was so? Give us just a little detail on it. Was it a buy bust? Were they trying to do a rip?
No, it was a buy bust in a hotel room, and adjoining rooms like we've done how many times before.
Thousands.
And came through the door, and the one guy who was Hell's Angels associate decided he was going to pull a gun, and that's what
Bad decision on his part.
Yeah.
So how serious was your partner hurt?
He took a round in the leg, so he was. But I think more psychologically, it damaged him because he got out of law enforcement for a number of years, and then came back and is still he's a lieutenant in another city up in North Carolina right now. So he's probably the oldest guy on the job by now.
At least he came back.
Yeah.
I mean, it's. I think you were in Miami when Kevin Stevens got shot in 1989.
No.
He recuperated. Took him a year to come back. But the guy that was with us in part of the inside arrest team, I won't say his name. He was a banker before DEA. Big guy. I mean, just massive and strong as a horse. But that was all it took for him. He resigned and went back to the banking business. From North Carolina, as a matter of fact.
Well, it's interesting because some people react that way. I know when I was in the academy, the DEA academy, within the first day or two we're there, they show videos of testimonies of agents who had been involved in shootings and stuff. And this guy was a cop from Detroit or someplace. And he said, this is not what I signed up for. And he quit, within the first week of the academy.
That's strange because Detroit, we had Jeff Moore on here, when he was, working up in Detroit, working dope up there. And it was the case that they made the mule out of, the Clint Eastwood movie, Leo Sharp, the Sinaloa cartel. And Detroit was, if you've been in Detroit and on the job up there, and Steve too, Joe Piersante, he was a Detroit cop, wasn't he?
That's where he started, yep.
Yeah, so anybody in Detroit kind of knows it's a violent thing. So I'm a little shocked that you come to DEA going, I didn't sign up for this.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe that's why he left the police department, thinking he wouldn't be exposed to that sort of violence.
Well, he should. We just had an interview with Bob Mazer, who started off on the IRS. IRS is a relatively safe hide in the office and do books until you get bored doing that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Hey, so where did your fascination then, how did you, what was your path then from that to go into DEA? Because it sounds like, you obviously were on patrol at some point, you were in vice and narcotics. Was there anything about the vice and narcotics stuff that stuck for you that you said, yeah, man, this is what I want to do full time? Is that what got you going with DEA?
Yeah. And actually, it was kind of as a result of that incident, the shootout at Days Inn, where the district attorney, I had worked the case. I knew where the dope had come out of the Florida Keys, and the district attorney's position at that time, when I tried to pursue it, was that's Florida's problem. And so I ended up I just turned it completely over to DEA at the time, and just the idea of being able to follow through with your cases really started me thinking about going federal, where you didn't have the local jurisdictions to worry about.
So how long were you on Durham PD?
8 years. I spent about 3 in patrol, and then the remaining 5 in dope.
And did you go then from Durham to DEA, or did you have another job?
No, actually, Customs was I applied to several different federal agencies, and Customs was the first one to offer me a job. So I spent about a year down on the border in Laredo, Texas. And then I ended up getting PCS.
But no, let's hang on to Lori. How you're coming from North Carolina? I mean, the only border you got is the Atlantic Ocean. Quite frankly, unless you're worried about Virginia or South Carolina.
Ever been to South Carolina?
Yeah, we were worried about South Carolina.
Yeah, if you've seen some of the guys on their state patrol, they take it very seriously. So what was it like going from North Carolina to Laredo? I mean, I'm not just so much about culture shock, but the type of work, the type of things that you were facing down there. And, was it as bad as what you thought? Was it worse than what you thought? Or did you just have no idea what it was like down there till you got there?
I really had I had no clue. When they offered me a job with Customs, it was either Reston, Virginia or Laredo, Texas. And I said, no, I want to go where the action is. Let's go down the border. But I'll tell you, a lot of what we did was responding just to port of entry calls. A car come in, the inspectors find dope in it or whatever. Then we go down and take the case and for prosecution stuff, or responding to checkpoints where the Border Patrol would. Well, actually, no, those were DEA cases. But no, mostly port of entry calls. I mean, we did some controlled deliveries. We did some stakeouts. I had my own horse down there. That was fun.
And whoa, okay, back up now. Let's talk about this, Tex.
That's a new G-Rod.
Right? You couldn't afford a car, so you had to get a horse, right? Fortunately, with the horse, you kick the door open on a horse, you're going to be in trouble.
No, we had what, 4 or 5 horses that belonged to in those days they called it the Office of Enforcement, and so we would ride the river, looking for.
Did you have a
for
10-gallon white hat you wore?
Nah, just a Customs ball cap, But we would ride the river looking for crossings and stuff, and then we'd come back at night and stuff, set up on them, that sort of thing.
Any wild things that you can tell us about down there? I mean, there had to be stuff you think about what it is today too, but you've got cartels, you've got dope, you've got, even then we didn't really know a lot about human trafficking, but there's, they're moving people and stuff. What was one of the, hairiest things you got into down on the border?
I really can't say there are any really what I would consider really hairy things down there, because it just seemed like normal, routine, everyday work,
Normal routine, drugs coming across the border, chasing people, riding a horse. That's an everyday thing in Detroit.
Let's put this way, there were no shootouts. There wasn't a time that I really felt that my life was in grave danger.
What's the largest amount of drugs you saw during that time?
Hundreds of pounds of weed, maybe 25, 30 keys of coke, because, these were hidden in vehicles. Mm-hmm. And it just not that much coke was coming across at the time. Not the way it is now in tractor trailer loads and stuff.
How were they finding most of the dope? Because did they have a lot of dogs back then, or was it more just the people at the port of entry knowing where to look?
Both. And, as far as any sort of, and then there were always the customs lookouts, so whatever intelligence that the inspectors were operating off of, type of thing too as well. But, and then we worked a lot with DEA down there too, of course. So we would, there were always the stash houses that we'd pick up somebody, we'd follow them to the stash house, and we'd set up surveillance on the stash house and, knock them off as they were coming and pick up the dope out of the stash house, to try to follow it up the chain.
Did you ever hit a money stash house?
No. Back then, really, we weren't emphasizing money. We weren't thinking along those lines. It was more about just putting dope on a table.
Wow. So how long did you do the customs thing?
I did that for 4 years, about 4 years, because then I got, in those days, they hired you as a customs investigator because they were doing away with the customs patrol. And those guys were like Journeyman 11 or Journeyman 9. And so when you got hired as a new special agent, they called you an investigator. And so to get an 11, a GS 11, that was a promotion. So after a year, I got promoted to a GS 11, and I was eligible for a PCS. So I went back to North Carolina, to Wilmington.
And a lot of folks, we have a rule about acronyms here. So as you're talking about things like that, That's okay. Yeah, that was your attack dog getting in position to.
Yeah, no, my
to
wife
say,
just came on.
Tell everybody what a PCS is.
Permanent change of station. PCS, yeah, permanent change of station. That's, when you go from one office to the next, and the government pays your move in most cases.
In most cases, yeah. Got a friend of mine in the Marine Corps that's moving to North Carolina, and now they've got do-it-yourself PCS. So if you want to save the government money, they'll pay for you to rent rental trucks or hire your own folks. So a lot of times it might take $25,000 to move somebody. He's doing it for $4,000. He is saving the taxpayers $21,000.
Good for him.
Yeah.
Because I'm telling you, I think those companies that had those contracts were killing us.
Boy. My dad was military, and I can tell you, I never knew it till later, but just to find out what it took to move us overseas. We lived in Iran for 3 years and then moved back. Overseas moves. Not only are they expensive, they're complicated.
I mean, when they would come in and pack you, they would pack everything. And then I had friends make fun of me on the other end when half-empty boxes of cereal and old stuff are getting unpacked. It's like, I didn't pack it. Yeah,
if you didn't empty the trash can, they
will. I've heard stories where the trash can got moved too with these guys because it's all about volume and weight.
Nosing around, the neighbor might get wrapped up in it too. What are you doing in here?
Exactly.
So tell us about that then. You're on 4 years and you're coming back to North Carolina.
Right. Went down to Wilmington, Port City, and with customs, it's not just dope too. You've got import export things, and back then we had tariffs, and I hated it. Somebody would import some screws, call them bolts, because they'd paid less duty on them, and then you'd have to go do a investigation to determine whether or not this was criminal. And I hated it.
There is a joke about being screwed on this, but I'm not sure what it is yet.
Anyway, but I was in those days, if you were with customs to work dope, you had to be cross-designated as a Title 21 agent. So I don't know, Steve, you remember that probly?
Oh, yeah. That was a big pissing match between agencies back then.
So tell us about cross-training, being cross-trained as a Title 21. What does that mean?
There was no training involved. It's just...
They waved the magic wand and they could dominate.
Okay, you can work dope now. I mean, that's basically it. So, and then Wilmington's not that big a town. So just about every dope case, you had the locals as well as DEA, Customs, FBI. We all worked everything together because it wasn't that large of a place. And
was Mike Grimes around back then?
Mike Grimes was definitely the man. Actually, I knew Mike from PD days. Is that the case I mentioned before down in Marathon? I turned that whole thing over to Mike, and Mike ended up getting these. There was Coast Guard guys who were stealing dope off of seizures. And so Mike made a great case out of that.
It was probably before Hal Jordan got down there, right?
Yes. Matter of fact, for listeners, I guess Hal Jordan was he was in the academy, one academy a class behind me at Durham, and I actually then introduced Hal and Mike, and Mike was very instrumental in getting Hal on with DEA.
Good man. All those guys. Mike's he's a freaking legend in DEA. He's the guy when we were talking to somebody, and they were talking about an agent lived on a houseboat down in Wilmington. That was Mike.
Dang.
Pretty sweet. Just to clarify a little bit what you were talking about, Title 21 there, Eric. So, and for Morgan, and you may already know this, but I doubt our listeners do, Title 21 is the title in the United States Code that all the drug offenses are under. And that's what DEA operates under, whereas Customs, they were checking people coming into the country. So to cross-designate Customs with Title 21 authority, DEA viewed that as, now they're stepping over in our area. So DEA would go back and say, okay, Customs, you're going to do that. Customs had this thing called Border Search Authority, which they could search you just simply because you're coming into the United States. And DEA always wanted that. But I don't think to this day they've ever gotten it.
That is a lot of, that's the old Spider-Man, with great power comes great responsibility. You're telling me I could search people without a warrant at the border? Sign me up.
Yeah. If you can, and then even if you follow them from the border to Chicago, as long as you maintain that nexus with the border, you can, you don't need a warrant. You don't need
Good to
anything.
go.
Well, see, and that's so a couple things. Let's explain a couple things to our players out there. But number one is a lot of people may have this misconception is that if they think if you're a federal agent, you can enforce every federal law. And I'll give you the corollary. As a state trooper, we were the only agency, but we could enforce every state law. But then Fish and Game they couldn't enforce traffic. You had your differentiations. And then the other thing too is, so I want you to talk about that. But the other thing too is a lot of people think they realize until you clear customs, until you clear immigration, you are not in the United States. So they can search you without warrants. They can do basically whatever they want. Mm-hmm. Having been detained by Canadian authorities one time.
Did they search you?
No, it was more of a thing. I'm doing some consulting with the company and they could have hired somebody in Canada. No, they couldn't. So $500 later and, 2 hours, they get the tax out of you. So it's all about jobs and stuff. So you know what you say now when you go to Canada?
You're a tourist.
I'm up here for a meeting. I'm up here for a conference. Not doing anything. That's it. Just a meeting. Yeah. But anyway.
And then they apologize to you because they're so freaking nice up there.
They are. By the way, I will tell you one thing. Hey. We did get a message on Instagram, Murph, an Australian and Aussie is a little ticked that the Canadians passed him. He says he's doing his part to listen to that, but he gave us a couple names. I told him, I said, we are working on a podcast, trying to find some folks in Australia. But anyway, Go back to the other thing though, Eric. I mean, a lot of people think, well, if you're a Fed, can't you just enforce everything that's on the federal books?
No. You each agency has their when you're gone a while, you start forgetting some of the terminology, but you're statutory jurisdiction. And it's spelled out in the laws is what statutes you can enforce. Now there is some lap over between agencies. From a federal agency standpoint, the FBI has the greatest jurisdiction. But all the other
let you know it too, don't they?
Oh yeah.
It's funny because the DEA is, I guess maybe other than the IRS, is the only single mission federal law enforcement agency that there is, and that's to enforce Title 21, which are the narcotic statutes. But the Bureau, they have over 400 different crime categories they're responsible for. They've even got one category that says if it doesn't fall in their category we have, it's still ours.
No.
It's like the early conquerors. They lay claim to everything they can see. This is all mine.
Hey, you know what? Nobody ever takes them on. They got it.
So Eric, how long were you on customs then? You said 4 years?
It was approximately 4 years.
And how long were you down in Laredo before you moved to Wilmington?
I was only there about a year.
Was that all you could take, or did you just want to get back to North Carolina?
No, it's just, I don't think there was a position there for me to get promoted in place there. But I think I really want to just get back to North Carolina, just get out of there. I mean, listen, when I got down there, except for what I think it's I-5 runs from San Antonio down on Laredo. If you get a block or two off of the interstate at the time, the streets were still dirt. And I came to find out that right before I got there, the mayor had been indicted because all of his roads on his ranch, multi-thousand acre ranch, were paved, but none of the streets in Laredo were paved. So, I've heard it's changed tremendously, but it's just wasn't a fun place to live.
In Chicago, the mayor, they take bribes and payoffs. In Texas, they take paved roads.
Paved roads, yeah.
That's hilarious.
Well, either that or the city employees didn't know the city limits when they were out there working. I don't know.
Gives new meaning to the streets of Laredo.
Yeah,
some are paved, some aren't. Sucks to be you. So what events or what things started happening to precipitate? Because I would assume then, I'm just going to make a leap of logic here, that you went from customs to DEA. Is that right?
Yeah. Yep. And
what brought that about? When did you finally see the light and go, hallelujah, brother, I want to be on DEA?
I when I was with customs, I wanted to work dope, and they still wanted you to work some of these other cases, and really it was Mike Grimes, Steve. Like I told you, I knew Mike from my PD days, and he says, hey man, put your application in.
What was it about dope that made you, like you said, you just wanted to work dope? Why?
I don't know. It's sexy. In hindsight, Good question, but it was the whole undercover stuff, and you got to go after some real bad guys.
Well, were you watching Miami Vice?
Of course we were.
Damn right.
See, there we go again. Everybody,
There we go.
every damn Fed on here that went to DEA watched Miami Vice.
Listen, here's what happened. I was when it was in its heyday there. I was still in uniform, and so everybody would call out back at the station having their meal break when Miami Vice came on. There was no cops patrolling that hour.
That's good. I never thought of that.
Hey, look, I'm about to tell you the other funny thing too is I don't know if you remember when Cops came out on Fox. It was the first. We had one guy working with us, line of PD, but we didn't. I didn't have. They were just rolling out cable too. This is the very early '80s, so not everybody had cable, and Fox wasn't available over the air like NBC, ABC, CBS. So you had to have cable. And this guy came in and was telling these fantastic stories about what he used to do at his prior department, until we started getting cable and started getting Fox. And then one day, one of the guys sent him up, "Hey, did you ever work one of these cases?" He goes, "Yeah." And he says, "I bet it was this, this, and this." And he just described the last episode of Cops to him. And it's like, yeah, there we go. That was his stories.
Everybody's a hero, and that's what Dave Mitchell said.
Yeah.
But it was so funny because once you started getting Cops, you went back and then you started looking at some of the prior episodes. You go, "Oh, that was that case. That was that case." Yeah. But hey, Miami Vice was sexier. So you're not sure why you wanted to work dope, but you did. So how long did it take you to get on DEA?
Oh, wow. Well, there's another interesting little story there. It took a while, and I kept being told, "Oh, you're in the next academy. You're in the next academy." This goes on for 3 or 4 times. And so I say, "Mike, I don't understand what's happening here." Well, then he called, Steve, what's a section up in DEA that hired?
It's in recruiting. Agent
Inspections?
No. Agent assignment. He calls agent assignment. And it turns out that when they did my background at the PD, some people up there badmouthed me. And
what did they badmouth you about?
Well, actually, I got caught up in some politics there. There was a captain that they were going after, and he had been my captain when I was in narcotics. And we had one deal where we had a cooperating defendant was going to make a buy for us. And so, typically we meet, we search him, we, put him in his car, we give him the money. Everybody's following him to the buy location. And halfway there, he pulls over and he says, "I can't find the money." And, we can't find the money. The money's nowhere. So the accusation was made that the captain and I conspired to steal the money, or I stole the money and he covered it up. So as a matter of fact, it was interesting because I was with Customs at the time. They called me up to the police department, and there's another incident too where it was the end of the fiscal year, and the SBI had the State Bureau of Investigation, North Carolina State Bureau of Investigation, had some monies to burn, and they said, "Hey, and one of the state agents came, "Hey, can you set up a buy?" And I said, "Yeah, I've been buying like quarter ounces off this guy, but if we're going to go any higher, we're going to have to front the money." We've had this discussion before, and if I want an ounce, I'm going to have to front him the money to go pick it up, because his guy won't just hand him an ounce without the money. So, I mean, we got state agents, we got county, we got our narcotics unit is out there. And so I meet the guy, I give him, I don't know, was it $2,000 for an ounce in those days, maybe? And so this guy's on a motorcycle, and we have surveillance, and we knew his source. This guy, Durham had a chapter of the Hells Angels, so this guy was affiliated with the Hells Angels. He wasn't a patch member, but he was affiliated with them. So we had everything set up. Well, this guy takes off through the woods on his motorcycle, and it was a rip, set up for a rip. Well, that and then this other incident with the kid losing the money, they then bring me in to an interrogation room when I'm with customs. And I thought, the guy who ripped me off, I don't remember his real name. His street name was Cowboy. And so they said, hey, we want to talk to you about that incident. And I thought, oh, they've identified this guy, because this wasn't that many years after it happened. I thought, oh, they bring me in there and we talk about this. What was real obvious to me was, as soon as this thing got going, I'm the subject of the investigation now. So I said, yeah, okay, we'll talk to you guys later. But so anyway, so Grimes checks what's going on with Agent Assignment and finds out all this stuff. And I said, Mike, and I explained the situation to Mike, and Mike knows the state agents and all. And Mike knows all these law enforcement people that are involved in this. So fortunately, I kept a copy of all of my investigative reports with the police department. And so I provided Mike with all these reports, how this whole thing was documented and everything. And so he put together a letter, sent it up to Agent Assignment, and boom, like within a day or two of them getting that letter, they're calling me, hey, can you be here next week for the academy type of thing. But so that's how I got in the DEA. It took a little longer than it would have, but let me back up a second. And that the guy with the money that disappeared, turns out he had taken the money and stuffed it down the vents, the heater vents in the dashboard. Okay, and so of course, this is the internal investigation, and so all right, you want me to take a polygraph? I'll take a polygraph. And then, he says he'll take a polygraph. So comes time for him to take a polygraph. I mean, 2 or 3 times he got an excuse, had to work, his baby was sick, something. He kept, bogarting on the.
That's what we call in law enforcement a clue.
A clue, yeah. Well, finally, I told him, I said, look, because he was working off charges. I said, look, either you take the polygraph or we're just going to, you're going to jail. And so he said, okay. So we go there, and it was interesting because I went in first, and so then he's still in there being polygraphed. An examiner comes out to me and he says, well, I got good news and bad news. He says, or good news, bad news. He says, well, he passed the polygraph. And I kind of like, huh? And he says, yeah, he admitted he stole the money.
He set you up.
Yeah. But you're ready to slap him.
Yeah. I was like, what? And, yeah, he passed the polygraph. That's when we found out that he had stuffed the money down the vents, and it took him a week with a coat hanger and the fan on high trying to pull the money out of the vents. And so,
well, yeah. When they brought you into Durham PD as a customs agent to talk to you about Cowboy, did they read you your rights?
No. That's what I'm saying. It was all very deceptive.
Wow.
And the whole thing was they were trying to go after my captain. I think they wanted to jam me up so they could go after him. And from what I understand, I mean, I was far enough removed, didn't hear enough, but he was old school. They brought in some new chief, and I guess he wanted to bring in more of his own people. And so they started going after my old captain.
And that is the most chicken shit way to do stuff.
Oh, yeah.
We've all worked with people, if they don't, rather than figuring out how to work with you or how to give you new skills and stuff, they just want to screw you over and make you retire.
Yeah. Matter of fact, old captain is kind of, he Perry Mason, what was his detective's name?
Paul Drake.
Captain
Holy
Clayton. Cow, how do y'all remember that crap?
Captain Clayton looked just like Paul Drake with that hair and gray
silver hair combed over, the suit, yeah.
Looked just like Paul Drake. Yeah.
Holy cow.
Steve, because I'm a trained investigator, I'm trained to remember important details. I am the Cliff Clavin of useless trivia, dude. You should know that by now.
Well, both of you just dated yourselves. Holy cow, Perry Mason.
Oh, yeah.
That was when I was a little kid.
Well, I was watching the reruns, Steve.
Sure you do. Nice try.
Steve's the only guy on this podcast that was there when Jurassic Park was actually made. Anyway, back to our regularly scheduled podcast. So hey, so what was the outcome of that? Was the captain able to jam it back up their ass, or what was the deal?
No, I don't think they never did get rid of him. He retired. They were trying to get rid of him, I guess, take his pension or whatever. But yeah, no.
How chick? I'm sorry. That's just if whoever was responsible for doing that, that's chicken shit. Somebody who served the city and done what they did, and I thought by the time, but now what did you do though with your dude who stuffed the money down the vents? Did they end up charging him?
I honestly don't remember. I don't remember, but he did do some jail time. I know he did some jail time because I had bought dope off of him. I bought a couple ounces off of him, I think. So
he stuffed the money in the vents of his own car, right?
His own car,
his POV, retrieved it later.
Yeah. And actually, he was tied.
I've got to tell you, I'd never heard of that before. Sorry, that's a new one.
No, and that's how, I got the Cowboy, because obviously we weren't going to be using him anymore. And I said, okay, you got to set me up directly with Cowboy, because he was getting it from Cowboy. So that was all part of the same thing.
So now, how tough was it? Did you have to go through the regular application process, like coming in from the outside, or because you were already on customs, did having that federal service, that GS, that government service designation, give you any breaks, make it faster?
No, I had to go through that painful experience of filling out the SF-86. It's a form. It's an application.
Standard Form 86 for getting access to classified information.
Yeah. And they want to know where you've lived and all your relatives. And,
it's like an encyclopedia.
Well, we were talking about this one time. How many pages? I can tell you, my SF-86, because I lived overseas too, is 36 pages long.
Yeah. Oh, if you've been overseas, that complicates it.
Yeah. Well, I was young. I said, look, I was in first grade. It doesn't matter. We got to. You may have been recruited by the Iranian intelligence back in the day.
Well, it was Iran.
But it was
like you were in London.
No. It's the days of the Shah. Remember, that's what Pat said about Stalin. He's a son of a bitch, but he's our son of a bitch. So he was our, the Savat, the secret police. Hey, actually, one of the people. My dad was military, but the oil wasn't a big thing back then, and so the standard of living for just even enlisted pay, he was an E8. We lived in a 2-story house, stone fence, pool out front. We had a maid, a gardener, a driver, and one of them disappeared one day with the secret police of the Shah called the Savat. And so again, they're son of a bitches, but he was our son of a bitch, back in the 60s. But anyway, you had to fill out, that painful thing and go back. Everybody you knew, who was your third grade teacher? I don't know.
Yeah.
So you had to do all of that stuff. So by the time you got done with that, when did you start with? So by the time you start DEA, you've got 12 years of law enforcement, right?
Correct. Yeah. I started with DEA in February of actually 91.
So you went through the FBI Academy?
Yes. I was up there in Quantico, yeah.
How many classes did you guys have going through at the same time?
I think we had, when I got there was one ahead of me, and then one came in after me. So I think we had 3 classes at the time. Because there had been a freeze. There had been a freeze for a while, and then they started hiring a bunch of people.
Yeah, and when did you come on, Murph?
87. And we had 5 classes in there at the same time. But it was the same reason that Eric had. They had this long hiring freeze, and now everybody's trying to catch up.
Yeah, because that's 87 is when I went with customs.
Murph didn't have that problem. They didn't like him. They tried to get him to just not to hire him by ignoring him for 2 years.
Wow.
Little did they know. They should have done.
They were training you
first.
Persistence. I'm persistent. Can you imagine the guys on the panel who hires you? The new agent, hiring. Buddy, hey, give him credit. He's persistent. That's what we need.
Yeah.
There's going to be this guy called Pablo. We're going to need to have him and JP go after. So we want somebody who's going to hang in there.
Well, I got hired because I was a token hillbilly, and I'm fine with that. There's not a lot of us West Virginians on DEA.
Yeah. We'll bypass all of those jokes and get back to get back to Eric here. So you finally get on DEA. So what do you choose? What are your choices for what your first post is going to be, and what do you actually end up getting?
I picked, again, wanting to go where the action is. I put Miami. Atlanta.
Let me guess. Anything have to do with Miami Vice? Did you think you were going to be wearing a white Armani suit, and driving a
Nah, it really wasn't my
Maserati?
style. But listen, that's where the action is. There was.
You thought you were going to have Chris Feistel hair? Remember Chris?
No. Oh yeah. No, Chris was in Bogota when I was in Barranquilla with DEA. So I knew Chris from down in Colombia. Yeah. But and then the third one was New Orleans. I wanted to go to a big city, because that's again the action.
Busy places.
Where'd you get?
Atlanta. I don't know anybody got their first pick.
Yeah. But was Atlanta one of your choices, or was it out of the blue?
Yeah. That was number 2.
Oh, okay.
I had family down there, 2 brothers down there. So
which peach tree did you live off of?
It's only like 34 to choose from.
I lived off of Peachtree Boulevard. Yeah.
If you ever want to confuse GPS, just type in like 3042 Peachtree, and it'll come up with 97 choices.
Yeah. Yes.
That's crazy.
Everything's Peachtree.
Yeah. Whose group were you in down there?
When I first got there, I was in. It was Group 2, but I can't remember his name. Paul Marconi took the group over when this guy left to become a polygraph examiner. He was. I wasn't crazy about him as a GS. I can't remember his name.
Oh, well, you know what, Morgan? We forgot to ask him. Did you have to write any memos in the academy?
Oh, yeah, forgot. Yeah. How many memos? I already got the nod of, yes. Okay, now the question is not if you did, it's how many.
No. Unlike some other folks on this podcast, I don't think I wrote any, and that's because I refused to.
Well, what does they want you to write memos about?
Remember, during the last week there, the tradition of the inflatable sheep Phoebe? Did they have that when you went through?
No.
Did you go through Glencoe?
No, I went through the FBI Academy.
Well, when I was there, they were, and I don't think they do it anymore, but they had this anatomically correct blow up sheep. Okay.
Wait a minute. How do you know it was anatomically correct there, Eric?
He's a farm boy.
I saw the darn thing. It was on public display.
Did you lift the tail?
I think the tail was sticking up, so you didn't have to lift it. But Phoebe, Federal Bureau of Investigation, they called this thing Phoebe, and so this is kind of a way of sticking it to the bureau, right?
Yeah.
Well, what they would do was like the night or two before graduation, was that last week you're in the academy after everything's done and over, and I think we did I think it was the day after we ran, or the night after we ran the what's the obstacle course? Yellow Brick Road. After we did the Yellow Brick Road, so everybody's in high spirits, and so you conducted a raid on the class that was following you, and gave them Phoebe. Because I guess we had a raid conducted on us. And they come in, I don't know, they're throwing water balloons and shooting fire extinguishers and just a bunch of juvenile stuff. Now, so I'm a little older than most of these guys in there. So, I go down to the floor below us where the other class is. And so I'm just kind of standing there, my arms crossed up against the wall, talking to another guy who's not going crazy and just watching the silliness. And one of the class counselors from that class comes up, and he starts telling me I got to leave and this and that, and I can't remember. And I said, why? I said, I'm not going to. There's nothing. Nobody's getting hurt here. And I said, I think I even said, why are you being such a dick? Because he was running around trying to push everybody in their rooms, and just going. He was going crazy, out of control. And so it's all over and said and done. I go back to my room. I'm in bed. And there's a knock on the door, and he's up there and takes me down to my class counselor and all this stuff, and so he then goes to the. No, those are the student. Who's you had the agents who were, what are they guys? Damn, Steve, I forget.
Class counselors, and then they answered to a coordinator.
class coordinator. And my class coordinator was female. Her husband was down in Miami. Starts with a T.
Sounds like, rhymes with.
Trish. Was it Trish? Can't remember now.
Yeah. Anyway, she was my class coordinator. She comes up. She says, I want you to apologize. I want you to do this, and threatening to have you kicked out, and on and on. And I said, look, I'm not apologizing. I didn't do anything wrong. And they're threatening to have you kicked out. I said, come on. We've gone through all this training, all the ways through, and this is a bullshit incident. You're going to kick me out. And so that was the end of that. Until I find out I get to Atlanta, and this class counselor, he had a friend in Atlanta, so he puts the bad mouth on me before I get down there. And Andy Diamond was the guy's name. And a couple years later, he comes to me and says, hey, I just want you to know you're okay. I said, so-and-so, and I can't remember this guy. He was out of Vegas, an agent out of Vegas. Yeah, he called me right at the academy and saying what a horrible person you were. And don't trust
Andy
him.
Andy Diamond was good people.
Yeah. So anyway, that was my refusal to write a memo thing. And so, and then Tom Petty's song, what is it? Won't Back Down. That became my theme song there
There you go. There you go.
Come here.
Well, I mean, that's the thing about DEA. They pick guys not to create a pun here off what you just said, but you picking guys that won't back down. You don't give up.
I mean, no, and it's just so it was all clean fun. Nobody got hurt, nothing got damaged, and he just wanted to exercise his authority there.
That was his 5 seconds of being in charge.
That's the Napoleon syndrome in effect. It's like people who have no other authority than that limited stuff, and they want to use it and abuse it. A lesson in leadership. That's, you always tell people sometimes you learn more from bad management than good management, because you learn the things you would never do if you got to be a leader. So, you had trouble with Wilmington. Somebody was talking bad about you there. I'm detecting a pattern here, Eric. Because Murph was just telling me before we came on air, about you. No. So what kind of stuff did you start working when you were in Atlanta?
I was assigned to a general enforcement group. Atlanta had a bad heroin problem. And I did a lot of undercover buying heroin.
That area over there behind the basketball stadium, the Cliffs, is that what they call it?
Yeah, but that's the area. That's the area. And I'm sure you know Cesar Diaz, right?
Oh yeah, very well.
Okay, well, Cesar had an informant, and he asked me if I would do some undercover work for him, and so sure. So he hooked me up. Anyway, I got hooked up with a gal named Peaches. And early on,
I'm shocked. Peaches on Peachtree. Meet Peaches on Peachtree. Cross Street, Peachtree Boulevard.
Actually, I think her nickname didn't come from the geographical perspective as much as it came from
anatomical. Are we getting into a Phoebe issue here?
And more probably profession. She told me that she used to be a shake your booty dancer. So anyway,
that don't make her a bad person.
No. Except it had been a few years since she'd been in that profession.
Oh.
She's just
Okay.
Anyway, so we're it's like most cases when you start out, you're trying to work your way up, and so we're identifying where the dope's coming from and that sort of thing. And so one of the buys, she comes out, gets back in the car, and she said, "Did you get the dope?" She goes, "Yeah." So she reaches between her legs and she removes it from inside herself, and hands me the packet.
Oh, now let's clarify, Eric. When you say it, are you saying that she secreted it internally?
Internally, yes.
Oh,
So I don't know.
Well, there's only a couple places you can go with that.
Well, she was a female. Okay.
Yes. And did you have gloves?
No. So what am I going to do here? I want the heroin. I'm supposed to, So what am I saying now? Oh, no, take it back. So,
I wonder if she pinched the dope.
I didn't give it a close inspection, that's for sure. So anyway, I get back in the office, and Caesar happened to be in another group. I said, "Here's your dope," and I hand it to him. And then I tell him where it had been.
You're cold. That's cold, brother.
So he and I still laugh about that to this day.
Oh yeah, he laughs about it. Now, how long did it take? You were laughing about it the whole time. How many years was it before he laughed about it?
No, Caesar's good people. After
He's
the
pretty
initial
easygoing.
shock, yeah.
Okay.
Man.
Well, where do we go from there? Podcast is over. I mean, you're not going to top that. I don't care if it's 26 tons of dope, man.
I think we just went to X-rated.
So then after that, then the other thing I did while I was in the Force Group, the Grateful Dead was still touring, and every year we'd work the concert there at now the Georgia Dome. It was whatever. They tore it down, built the Georgia Dome. But anyway, so then from that, I ended up getting some headquarters funding, the dangerous drugs section, and went on tour, a spring tour in the motorhome out of Miami. I don't know if you ever used that, Steve.
Holy, no, I didn't. Well, I used the one in Miami, but not the one out of Atlanta.
No, there's a motorhome. And so, for like, I don't know, was it 2 months or longer? I was out, doing the Dead tour. I had a task force agent with me, and we went all over, Chicago. We were in New Jersey. We were all over buying LSD primarily, other psychedelics. Yeah. So
let me tell you something
fun.
about the Grateful Dead. They had one top 40 hit maybe, but they had the most dedicated fan base, I think, of almost any group out there. They would follow them.
Oh no, it was crazy
everywhere.
Yep.
No, well then, want me to talk about the riot I started at UNC Chapel Hill?
Yeah, that sounds really good.
Just throw it out there. No, we don't want to hear about the riot you started. Let's talk about where the next place you found dope that came out of a bodily orifice.
No, we had bought some acid off of a guy, task force agent bought some acid off of a guy down in Atlanta. So the next stop on the tour was Chapel Hill. And they had just this brand new Dean Dome out there. And if anybody knows anything about the Grateful Dead, prior to all the shows they have out in the parking lot, they have what they call Shakedown Street, where everybody sets up and all the hippie paraphernalia and the marijuana laced brownies and everything else are sold out there. And so I don't know how we did it, but we located this guy. But I'm 6'4", and this guy was taller than me. He was probably 6'6", and a big head of bushy red hair. So we found him. So I had an arrest warrant for him out of Atlanta. And so come up to him, and the task force agent is in front. And about the time he approaches him, badges him, tells him under arrest, I just wrapped my arms around him. Because when they tried to arrest him in Atlanta, he ran. So we knew he was a runner. And I was working with, a matter of fact, the gal, what a small world. The officer who did my background, Sam Steele, she was the chief of police for UNC Campus Police. So, we had all this coordinated. I had a Chapel Hill PD or Chapel Hill Campus Police radio and stuff. And so anyway, so we grabbed the guy, and the damn fight was on. And I can remember at one point, I had my ass literally, I get in trouble now for it, but on his throat, trying to hold him down on the ground.
And let's have everybody be clear. You didn't say ass, ASS. We're talking about ass.
Ass, yes.
Yeah, I had my ass on his throat.
Expandable baton.
It's a collapsible metal baton that's starts off like maybe 8-9 inches long, and you snap it out. But I like the other one. I had my ass.
I thought maybe you showing him where you had the dope.
No. So anyway, we like most fights, you end up on the ground. So I'm straddling him, and he's literally levitating off the ground, 6 inches off the ground. And so I had my asp on him, and he's still coming up off the ground. And there's little serene moments that happen in these sort of things that you remember. Well, my partner, the task force agent, some nice peace-loving hippie in the crowd sprayed him with mace. Okay, so he's out of the fight now. And I already put out officer need assistance calls. So the sirens are coming, everything's coming. I mean, they're throwing bottles at us. The car windows around us are all being broken out from all the projectiles hitting them and shit. I ended up, having problems with my shoulder, as a result of the fight and stuff. But anyway, we finally got him out of there. But we bought off of him there, so we would have a local charge as well, so we could charge him locally. But the district attorney up there didn't want to prosecute, but he was rather liberal, and I knew him from my PD days. I mean, he and I were on first name basis, but he wouldn't prosecute.
Jeez.
Was that because of the riot you started by putting your asp on somebody's face?
No, he just there's allegations that he was a coke user himself, and
that was his source of supply. Man, the price was going to go up if he took out his local dealer.
Yeah. So anyway, so no, but yeah. So that was just one of those little fun moments. But then the little serene moment was Paul gets sprayed with mace, and this little hippie chick, I remember she had one of those little flowery, kind of long, hippie-like dresses on. And she leans over and she says to this guy, she says, "Hey, man, just be cool. Everything will be all right." And so I look up at her and I said, "You know what? Thank you. Thank you very much." As bottles and rocks are flying by, and, people are trying to pull me off from on top of him. And,
jeez.
In the background, Tom Petty's playing "No, I Won't Back Down."
and then poor Paul, by that time the uniforms, campus cops had showed up, and I think some city cops and stuff too. So they had a long line just coming in there. So Paul's blind. He's trying to reach his way around. He finds the first patrol car he gets to, opens up the back door to get in. It's a canine unit.
Oh, did he get bit?
No, but the dog came at him, but he almost got bit. So anyway.
Hey, to make it timely, so, speaking of Miami, spring break has been going on. They've been having huge problems in South Beach, in Miami and stuff. There's this picture of a police handler with his canine out there and starting to get into the fray, and the dog's so excited. The dog doesn't go after the guy. The dog went after his own handler.
Oh, no.
Oh, man. Yeah,
I didn't see that one. I'm very familiar with that. I spent post-retirement, one of my gigs was I spent about 4 years with emergency management down there. So I was very much a part of all those spring breaks and urban beach weekend and stuff. Just unlike anything else you've ever seen.
Yeah, more like security drills. That's the closest we'll be to getting invaded. But so going back to that, so you're doing all this work in Atlanta. How long do you stay in Atlanta before, and what's your next post?
Actually, well, one of the things I did then with Atlanta is I was on the mobile enforcement team. So then I spent a number of years just traveling around the Southeast. And for those who don't know, the mobile enforcement team, our mission was to target drug organizations that had a nexus with violence. And we would really go after those who had prior convictions because, once you have the prior convictions, it elevates your classification and stiffer sentences. And so I did that for several years.
Who was your GS at Met?
Frankie Schroyer.
Ah, okay. I took over after Frankie.
Yeah. And then, so I was one of the team leaders. Our group was divided up into two Met units, two Met teams, and I had one of the Met teams.
Nice.
So yeah, it was fun.
I enjoyed it. I loved it.
I did. Yeah, no. And cause we just, and darn it, right before the next Met deployment I would have been Durham. But that's when I got Colombia.
Well, in that deployment to Durham, you probably already know this, but our listeners don't. They actually arrested a guy for murder. So that was the goal of the Met team, was to take out the most violent drug traffickers in that particular area, and they actually got a guy for murder on that one.
So let's talk about your trip down south. So why did you decide that you wanted to go south? Why did you want to go to South America, to Colombia? Because I know that's where the action is, but
Exactly. That's where where if you're on a war on drugs, where do you want? That's the front lines right there.
so
Um,
by the time you were going down there, Murph was already back, right? And were Chris and Dave still down there? Chris Feistel and Dave
yes,
Mitchell?
yes,
So was the
yes.
whole Cali thing still going on when you got down there, or that had that investigation been completed?
It was in its throes. I mean, there was still residual stuff going on, but
What year did you get there?
91.
You got to Barranquilla in 91?
Yeah.
That's when I got in, to
No, what am
Bogota.
I saying? Not 91. I got there in 98. What am I saying? No, 98.
Some of that
Eric?
LSD from the Grateful
Yeah,
Dead, I think,
yeah.
is coming back to
Yeah, I
haunt you
got
there, brother.
Yeah, no. It's it's
Those
not
flashbacks
it's
are a
not bad
bitch.
memory. It's just old age.
Well, one of our previous guests, Bill Sarukas, we had him on a couple episodes back when he was working undercover for a police department. They seized some LSD. He put it into an envelope, licked the envelope, got some of
Oh,
the
yeah.
LSD. He took a
Oh,
trip, and
God.
when he got on the marshals, he had to disclose that. Hey, yeah, I had a bad trip with LSD.
Mm.
Oh, what fun. But let me tell you what the scary part about that was LSD. But I just read an article too where 3 officers got poisoned with fentanyl. They had to apply Narcan to themselves.
Wow. Yeah.
I mean, how stuff has changed. But
Yeah.
you get down
Wow.
there in 98. So tell us about Barranquilla, because that was like, there's no more post at Barranquilla, but but back then it was like, it was nice. Close to the water, right? Fancy place.
Um, Barranquilla was a dump.
Mm-hmm.
I was trying to set you up, man. I was
No,
helping you out here.
Listen, we used to love it when they'd send us up to Bogota. It was kind of like going back to some semblance of a real world, Bogota.
Back to civilization, right?
Yeah. And you could understand their Spanish in Bogota. It
Yeah.
wasn't the coastal slang and
Well, how many years were you in?
dialect.
How many years were you in Colombia?
Almost 3.
Well, then we would have crossed paths, because in 2000 I was down there on Plan Colombia, and
Oh, were
actually
you?
JP
Okay,
and
yeah,
I
yeah.
actually passed. We didn't know it, but we passed each other in the hallways of the embassy,
Okay, yeah. No,
because I
I
was
yeah, I
staying
was
in
there for. Yeah, that was McCaffrey, right? General McCaffrey.
the
Was the drug
ambassador. You
czar?
mean?
No, the drug czar at the time.
Oh, the czar. Yeah.
Yeah, he was the one who was, I think, spearheaded that whole thing.
Who was your boss in Barranquilla at the time?
Mark Edmondson, when I got there.
I don't know, Mark. I'm sorry to the
Yeah.
listeners. This is like a trip down memory lane.
Mark Edmondson, and he was a good guy. I really liked Mark. And then Fidel Sanchez came after him.
I do know Fidel.
So what did you end up? So I mean, look, we just Murph and JP, they got Pablo, Chris and Dave. They brought down the Cali cartel. What was left for you? I mean, it's like they took all
Nothing.
the fun.
I mean, I was.
That was it, huh?
Well, I'm starting to see. I hadn't particularly recognized this in myself, but now talking to you guys, I kind of butted heads some in Barranquilla.
Oh my God, here we go again. So
Did you start a riot down there?
No riots, but
who did you have a problem with, and why?
well, the rack at the time would come in early, and he would peruse the newspaper articles, and he would see that in Value de Par, they made a heroin seizure. So he said, call the lieutenant up in anti-narcotics, get him to fax all the reports to you. Then I want you to do a DEA 6 saying this was a joint investigation with DEA and the Colombian National Police. And I said, that's an intel job. This was not a joint investigation. I'm not doing it.
Well, that's a chicken shit way of claiming
Exactly.
stats,
And
too.
it's friggin' lying and everything else. And that's what it was. It was claiming stats that weren't ours. And that's the job of intel. They can write that up as an intel report. So, but anyway.
Well, did you have to write a memo after that?
No. My tour didn't get extended. So,
so
there's always a payback.
Yeah. Well,
Eric, just tell me you're starting to. Hopefully, you've gotten past this with your next assignment, right? So,
I don't know. Maybe as you get older, maybe you mellow. Hopefully,
it'll all be good, man. It'll all be good.
Yeah. So, but I was assigned in Barranquilla myself, another agent, Eric Nowak, we were the liaison with counter narcotics, where they had their major base there on the North Coast out of Santa Marta. So we spent a lot of time in Santa Marta, La Guajira. We spent a lot of time flying around with Colombia National Police and helicopters up there in La Guajira, blowing up clandestine airstrips, going after coca labs in the Sierra Nevada, that sort of thing.
And Santa Marta's a whole lot nicer than Barranquilla.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, I didn't mind going TDY there. We had our favorite hotels and our little watering holes, and yeah, things were good. Yeah, people were saying, weren't you afraid and dangerous? And we had the armored vehicles and we had the weapons and stuff, but really, it's kind of the old Beach Boys song: "The bad guys know us and they leave us alone" type of thing. Nobody wanted to, mess with you.
So, Morgan, how we talk about I was 6'2", wide as you get. There's Eric's 6'4", white boy up there.
Dave and Chris were 6'3". I'm beginning to detect a pattern in agents. They said to Bogota too. It's the DEA basketball team.
And listen, we worked out at the time. There was a consulate there in Barranquilla, and it provided consulate services, passport, visa stuff. And I'm with tech. Computers and stuff at the consulate, and oh yeah, sure you are. You're DEA. We weren't fooling anybody with our,
you should have had Chris and Dave's job, because they were working with agriculture. That was their job, to work with agriculture.
Well, if you were at the embassy, you can get away with that. But they're the only, people knew DEA was there in Barranquilla, and the only other thing, if you were a U.S. citizen, you go in there for passport services. So if you were there, and I wasn't the little old lady sitting there stamping passports,
Yep.
So
that's why I told everybody I'm in janitorial
and we're wearing
services.
fanny. Yeah, you're what?
I was in janitorial services. All your neighbors thought you were just a janitor to the embassy. They left you alone.
Yeah. So, and then plus the fact, we're all wearing 5'11" tactical shorts and wearing black fanny packs. So, come on.
They're
just a flag. Wave the flag.
Yeah.
So I live in Northern Virginia, and you were talking about, maybe moving up to Reston, but you drive around enough in Reston and Tyson's Corner and stuff. It's easy to spot the quote covert buildings. And the one place is they would have these classified buildings or whatever, but they all use the same black fence contractor. So all you did is drive around looking for the black fence. There's another site, and there's another one.
Yeah.
And they most of them have the poles that'll jump up out of the ground if somebody tries to run the gate.
But you know what the biggest? So this is Tyson's Corner. This is Reston, tech area and stuff, the tech corridor, Silicon Valley East. The easiest way to find out to know is every other building's got its company name on the front, but you drive these other ones, they have just a little set of numbers and nothing else. You're going, there you go.
Yeah.
Like those big buildings down there on 28, heading down towards Route 50.
Yeah, heading down towards NRO down there in Chantilly and all that other good stuff. But so Eric, you're starting to make a name for yourself. So where's the next place they talk bad about you before you get there?
No, let me add with being on the coast there in Colombia, that's huge shipment point. Dope coming from the interior and it's shipped out, and they're either running up, towards Dom Rep or Puerto Rico, and then going over into Central and I guess Mexico's Central America. So a lot of what we did down there were interdiction. The majority of what we did were interdiction cases, and obviously we supported those investigations in the state as well. So that's when we started seeing. When they asked me how biggest load I ever seen, I mean, now you're getting into thousands of kilos that we're seizing there on these interdictions.
It's outrageous, wasn't it?
Yeah. It just, it becomes unreal. It's like
before you got to DEA, what's the most dope of whatever kind you saw as a police officer?
Well, that 3 kilo deal was the biggest, at the time that I had seen.
That's
and then, back in the early 80s like that. Yeah.
Well, then but in customs though too, you said you got a few 100 pounds of weed.
Yeah.
A couple times, right?
Yeah. And then, very little. It was mostly weed coming through there in Laredo.
No, and you said in Atlanta it was heroin. Were you just doing grams and down there? Were you hitting ounces at all?
No. Actually, I was buying ounces of heroin back in PD days. because Durham, I don't know how much you know about the history of Durham with their whole heroin thing. And then you got the Ike Atkinson's thing out of Goldsboro. And then there was a guy named Frank Pee Wee Matthews who his first arrest was stealing chickens from the local Central Carolina Farmers Processing Center. And he went up to New York. And similar to what was the Denzel Washington, I think, played in a movie
Training
about
Day.
No, where another heroin dealer out of New York. It was made famous, and he was actually, I think, from Greensboro. Similar story. Frank went up there. Pee Wee Matthews. His name was Frank too, but different last name, I think. Anyway, but Matthews went up there, and he just trusted his homeboys to work for him up there in New York. And so, as a result, there was a lot of high quality heroin coming into the Durham area. I went to high school in Chapel Hill, and back in high school, I had classmates heading over to Durham all the time, score heroin.
American Gangster, Frank
Lucas. Yeah.
Frank Lucas.
Yeah. So, similar story. He went up there, a nobody, and he just developed this whole thing. And actually, again, it was kind of Al Capone thing. It was the IRS that got him. And his aunt's husband was a captain on the police department. And he was there when I was on. And so the aunt met the bondsman, a little 5 Points in Durham, handed him a shoebox full of money. And Pee Wee disappeared, never been found. Nobody knows where, not a trace of him since after his aunt gave the bondsman the shoebox full of money.
How about that?
So you mean like he successfully self witness protection? I mean, self-serve witness protection, or he's dead?
Well, he might be dead of old age by now, but
he effectively disappeared.
He disappeared. Yeah, I can't remember. There was a book written about him, but pretty interesting stuff. Yeah, Frank Pee Wee Matthews. If you Google that real quick, you probably find it.
Not Pee Wee Herman, Steve,
Nope.
The other Pee Wee.
But yeah.
Speaking of sheep and things you get familiar with, Pee Wee apparently had a little problem with kids too. But Eric, so let's start now taking a glide path to you're starting to work all these cases. What starts your trajectory towards finally coming across crossing paths with Luis Navia? I mean, where do you end up getting assigned, and what do you end up start working on that starts you on this trajectory towards him?
I'm trying to think. Was it 2001? I guess 2001. 2001. Actually, that was that case was not mine. A couple agents, they're working with a vetted group there. It was the Mellizos.
Los Mellizos, the twins.
The twins, Victor and Manuel Mejia. Mejia. Yeah, it was working that case. And they needed somebody to accompany or to go with a customs agent out of Houston. He was bringing a triggerfish in. And they weren't going to let the customs guy run around Venezuela by himself.
Okay. Can you tell everybody what a triggerfish is?
Let's talk about triggers, because the Secret Service used to use that a lot too. Hey, everybody, that's the end of part one of our interview with Eric Kolbinsky and some of his exploits. And we got some good stuff coming up in part two, which, as always, comes out on Thursday. In the meantime, go visit us on our website, gameofcrimespodcast.com. We've got lots of good stuff on there, pictures, books, mailing lists, merch, things like that. Also, visit us on the socials at Game of Crimes, on Twitter, at Game of Crimes Podcast, on Facebook, and the Instagram. But where you got to be, you have to be on Patreon, patreon.com/Game of Crimes. We have a lot of good stuff. Some of our recent episodes that have come out, 911, what's your emergency, and you just can't make this shit up. We've getting a lot of good response from that, having a lot of fun. So make sure you visit us there as well. And come back and visit us for part two of our interview with Eric Kolbinsky and see which country he may have got kicked out of or which riot he might have started. Only on Game of Crimes. And once again, thank you for playing the biggest, baddest, most dangerous game of all, the Game of Crimes.